Well, hello, Ephraim, and welcome back once again. Before we get started, I'd like to make a few announcements. First of all, you can check out our Facebook page, and you can go to Ephraim International Ministries, and we have a Facebook page. You can also go to our Instagram. We have some stuff that's being put up on Instagram, so I would encourage you to go there, check that out. Soon we'll be launching our website, and we'll be launching another community website as well. That's going to be very, very populated, and it's going to be an integral part of what we're doing. So I'd like to encourage you to check those things out. And also, we do have an upcoming conference, and that's going to be, it's a ways away. It's in April, and we will be doing our Seder dinner together for Passover. So it's the spring feast, and we will get together collectively, and we will go through that and have a great time there. It'll be like April 10th, 11th, 12th, I believe are the dates, and everything's tentative right now. We'll keep updating you with information. The more that we get, the more that we will share. Right now, we're just searching out for the venue and stuff like that to make sure that it's convenient for everybody. We do have a number of venues in this area, so it's not going to be a problem getting one. It's just a matter of getting the one that we want, and God will provide that means, and He'll provide that way. So we look forward to everybody joining us. Whoever would like to, you can contact us as we get going. Like I said, we'll have more information as we get closer to the date, within the next month. But I want to give everybody as much time as possible to make preparation. Some people have to get passports or an enhanced driver's license. You can go to the government website, Government of Canada website, and you can see what's required, or you can send me an email. And if you do want to get a hold of me, you can contact me at ephraim.ministries@outlook.com, and you can get a hold of me, and I will respond to you accordingly to answer any questions that you do have regarding any topic, really. So we're going to continue doing this teaching that we've been talking about with the balance of marriage. And with marriage, what we want to talk about, and I want to talk about today, is the culture of the home. And we're going to do something a little bit different here in a few minutes. I want to go through a list of questions for you, and it's kind of an exercise. So if you have a pen and paper, I would encourage you to get a pen and paper and to write some of them out, or go back and listen to this if you're listening on YouTube, and you can pause it and you can write them all out there as well. It'll be up there probably by the end of the day. So I would encourage you. But when we get into the culture of the home, the number one thing with the home is the home has got to be a place of safety. It's got to be a place of safety for your spouse. It's got to be a place of safety for your children. And I'm talking little kids, and I'm also talking when they're teenagers. They got to have a place to come back to. They know that there's a place that they get out there and they get off track, and they got to be able to have a place to come back to. And that place has got to be home. And if you build that home and that peace within that home, they'll come back and they'll ask questions, and they'll figure things out for themselves the way that it's supposed to go, and the way that it's supposed to be set up. And they'll have that peace so that they can get back on track and apply that, even though they sometimes stray, and they come back around. And that's the nice thing about it. But if you give them that opportunity and you give them that place to go, they will go, and they will benefit greatly from it. You see, but like I talked about peace within the home, that home has also got to be filled with love. And it's got to be, I'm using these words, full of peace, filled with love, full of love. I'm using those for a reason, because when we get into this little exercise later, you're going to have some work to do to make your household a little bit better. You see, but you have to be a good husband, guys, and wives. You have to be a good wife in order to have love and peace and all those things within the home. And it's trying to determine what love is, what peace is, what relationship is, what your role is, and your responsibility, your obligation, your accountability unto the Father as to what He's going to hold you accountable for, and bringing those things in to the home, because that's going to develop a culture, and a healthy culture. If you have a bad culture, it's kind of obvious. You're going to breed bad things out of that culture, and then you're going to have kids who are a mess, and kids who don't want to serve God, and they want to I've seen it on both sides, even within my extended family. One side went to the things of God, one side said no, and you can see the difference. There's always a difference that you can see with people who have God in them, or a form of God in them, and I don't mean that in a negative connotation, but every generation has transitioned, and if they have that transition within them, you can always see it, and you can see the benefits and the blessings that they have just because of some of the things that they do, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly. They still are able to obtain those blessings. But it's important to establish that healthy environment based on the things of the Father, and push those things of the Father, and that will create that environment. You see, because a home that's run by discord, bitterness, angry voices, it doesn't feel safe to children. That's not safety. That's not security. That's not safety to your spouse. That's not security to your spouse. What that is chaos to them, and they don't have any peace there, and they don't feel any love. And we're going to talk about these things here in a few minutes to a little bit greater depth as you're going to pick a scenario that you've gone through, and you're going to be able to look back at it, and we're going to analyze it a little bit. You see, but we wonder why then we have kids that have insecurities. We wonder why we have kids that have fears. We wonder why we have spouses that have insecurities. We wonder why we have spouses that have fears. It's because they're not full of love, and they're not full of joy. And that's the obligation of the other spouse, to be able to provide some of that stuff and fill them up with where they lack. You see, when your kids come of age, and if they're in that environment, as soon as they come of age and as soon as they can, what do? They're gone. You've lost them, and they don't look back. They're going to go try their own thing and try their own thing their own way and make some mistakes. But the odds of you getting them back, unless you change, unless you have a heartfelt repentance, unless you can get to the things in the depths of the Father and get it changed through Him, you're not going to change that on your own. You're not going to change it by the way that you always have been. You see, children raised in a strifeful home, children raised in that bitterness, that discord, and that constant fighting, nagging, anger, they grow up and they just go out there and repeat the same thing because that's all they know. And they go out there and they have homes that are the same way. It's like a pyramid scheme almost, where it starts at the top and then it expands and expands and expands. And the more people that come underneath of it, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it waxes worse. But the big thing is that we know our Father, we know who our Father is, and that we keep in line with our Father so that we can have these good, healthy homes. You see, because a home characterized by love between mom and dad, or dad and mom, it feels safe. When they can see love in the home, even between the spouses, kids see that stuff, and that makes them feel safe because they see that the parents are feeling safe within themselves. And that's why you should never fight in front of your kids. That's one thing I can say is I never saw my parents ever fight, whether they did or not. I'm sure they had some, but at the same time, I never ever saw that. And we tried to keep that at arm's length away from our kids when we were raising them as well, applying those same principles. My kids never saw us, fighting and arguing and any of that stuff. We always kept it away from them because that destroys the peace that they have. That destroys the love that they see. See, when you make up between you and your spouse, you make up and it's over. Those kids, it could destroy them for weeks, months, or even years by seeing something like that. And that's the thing that we got to realize, is that just because it's healed within us and between your spouse, you don't know the damage that it's doing to those kids, and how long it takes for them to heal, and how long it takes for them to build that peace and that trust back up, because they had that moment of insecurity that really jolted them because they don't trust at that moment. And how long does it take for that antitrust to go away? And that's why it's got to be isolated. If you're going to have an argument, if you have to have a discussion, you don't have to have an argument. The easiest thing to do is not argue. Put that stuff aside, get over it, and just have discussions, have mature discussions, have, discussions that aren't built on emotion, have discussions that aren't built on, that are built on fact. Because what it is when we get away from the facts, and we, when you start arguing, usually you end up arguing about things, and 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road, you look at each other and say, what did this start off as, and how did it get here? And that constantly happens. Why? Because it just rolls, because it's all emotion. If you could just stop and stick to the facts, sometimes people have to just write things down just to stay within the guidelines, stay within the facts of what it is. You see, but within our culture, marriages are very fragile because they're based on, I'm going to have to just say it this way, they're based on a false love. because it's based on, oh, you fall in love with somebody, she falls in love with the man falls in love with the wife, you pick up, you go get married. Wait a minute. You see, that's the culture we live in. You see, but at the same time, listen to me, it is possible to fall in love with many women. Now, just because I say that for a reason. I love my wife, and I'm not out there looking to fall in love with another woman. That's not what this is about. But what if you fall out of love? And then what do? You see, but that love is false anyway, because it's a North American mentality of love. It didn't start off as love. It starts off as lust, and it builds into love, and that takes time to build. So if you're going to fall out of lust, then start looking for love. And that's where you get that 7-year itch. And that's why the 7-year itch is a real thing. And let me tell you something else. You're going to go through something around 12 years. And then you're going to go through something again a few years after that. It's the real deal. What it is, it's called transition. And where things fall apart, and I've talked about this already, is when one person is ready to transition to the next phase before the next person. One person's ready to grow up and the other person's not ready to grow up. One person's ready to go to the next phase of life and the other person's not. One person wants to start having kids and the other one doesn't. And that's where a lot of this strife comes in. And this is where a lot of this problems come in between two people. Sometimes there's kids that are involved. When there's kids involved, it's like, okay, we got to grow up. Well, I don't want to grow up yet. I still want to do my own thing. Or I want to do this, or I want to do, it gets chaotic. And it's all because, hey, the transition is happening. And sometimes the man will get in front of the transition, and sometimes women will get in front of the transition. You see, but the whole thing is we've got to get back to a biblical standard of love, a godly kind of love, as God defines what love truly is. Because it's not this North American love that we think we have. So I've got to ask a few questions. And when I say a few, I'm talking about 20 of them. I want you to not so much bring back up, I want you to put yourself in a situation. And, I can think of a few situations that I've been in, sometimes in my more selfish years, and I can go back and I can look at some of this stuff. But you got to ask yourself when you're in your predicament. Some people are in a predicament right now. Some people are in a situation right now. Some people have got to answer these questions right now. And I'm going to just kind of go through it. Do you love your wife? Do you love your husband? You see, those are real questions that need to be answered. You're saying, well, why do I have to answer that? Because you got to start somewhere. And if you're going to start somewhere, you got to actually start. You got to actually do it. So do you love your wife? Do you love your husband? Let's just say, do you love your spouse? Most people are going to say yes, and that's the right answer that you probably should have. If not, then you got problems already. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever been into a situation? Number 2 question. Do you have to make a decision sometimes to go home? Do you have to make a decision to stay home? Or do you go home and then leave right away to go do something else? How many times have we kind of bolted in the door and then ran out the other door because what? You just don't want to be there. You just don't want to be there. There's all kinds of excuses that can come up. It could be work. It could be a club, recreation. It could be whatever. I'll get into that a little bit more here in a few minutes. But do you have to make a decision, or do you actually want to go home? And that's one thing that you've really got to ask yourself, and you've got to answer that for yourself. You see, let me ask you this question. What's changed from the time you couldn't see enough of each other? What's changed? And that's one thing you've got to ask. Okay, you went back to the love thing. You went back to, okay, I love him, but now I got to get in and out, and I want out to go somewhere, got to go here, got to go there. All because of what? All because of what? We'll get to that in a minute. But what's changed? What's different about the whole thing? Let me ask you this question. What's changed from the time you couldn't see enough of each other? Are your interests interfering? The 4th one, is it your interests? Is it work? Sometimes that's not always an interest. Is it a club? that you're involved with? Could it be some type of a recreation thing that you do? Maybe you like to play darts and it's overcoming you. Sports? What about computers? See, whatever your interests are your interests interfering? Are these things interfering? What about friends? Do friends interfere? Let me ask you this one. You get on that computer, guys or gals, it goes both ways, and people get lost in it, and they can spend hours and hours and hours on it. Is it interfering? Is it almost like an addiction? What about pornography? Well, that's a whole different state of what we're talking about, but it's an absolute interest that some people can't shake. But are your interests, whatever they are, I got work, club, recreation, sports, computers, friends, I just jotted a few things down. Are they interfering with your relationship? Now, if you've got something that's interfering with your relationship, and most people could probably agree that they have had or do have at this present time, would your spouse, she or he, would they like to see you give something up? Ask yourself, would they like to see you give something up? I got to ask the question, the seventh or the sixth question. Why do you do it? What is it that you're getting from it? Why do you do it? The seventh point. Does what you're doing make you feel significant? I can share a little story on this about my involvement in sports. It made me feel significant. I was good at it. I was good at what I did when I was coaching it. I was good at developing. I was very good at, on the board, the executive, and I got a lot of fulfillment out of that. Selfish fulfillment, yes. But it made me feel good. It made me feel significant. I got to ask this question. The eighth point. Do you feel significant to your wife, or do you feel significant to your husband? We're getting down to it here. Because if you feel less significant to your wife, your spouse, your husband, if you feel less significant to them than you feel to your interests, you're not going to give up your interests. And this is where this whole thing starts to fall apart with time management within a relationship, within a marriage. Because you would end up giving up your spouse before you give up your interest because it's making you feel significant. Is there a gap here? Yeah, we're starting to open this thing up. We're starting to pry into this thing a little bit. You see, but what happens is you get put into a corner from your perspective through your insight. You get backed into a corner because now you're getting to the point where decision times are coming. Spouse or interest? Can I try and manage the two? Can I try and bring them together? Can I keep doing what I'm doing and try and do something else to keep her happy or to keep him happy while still doing what I want to do? It's starting to get down to decision time, and it's starting to get to the point where it's getting backed into a corner now. You see, but what you've got to do, you have got to fulfill your spouse, and you have got to be fulfilled by your spouse. And if you love your spouse, fulfill them. Remember I was talking about a house full of love and a house full of peace? These are the things that you have got to fulfill within your spouse. You've got to fill them up with love. You've got to fill them up with peace. But some people don't want to do that. They don't want to build up their spouse. They don't want to fill them up with love. They don't want to fill them with peace. They don't want to fill them with security, because if they do that while hanging on to their interests, which makes them feel significant, if they step out from that and start doing this over here, they're going to start getting to the point where they feel trapped. And when you start feeling trapped, you got another problem. And it all stems, and the whole root of this whole thing is a lack of fulfillment right from the very beginning. Because we weren't fulfilled by our spouses. We weren't fulfilled and opening ourselves up to their love if they're trying to portray it. Some people have a hard time receiving peace. Sometimes people have a hard time receiving love. But these are the things that we've got to realize of how this whole thing breaks down and how it goes. Some people will hold back because they don't want to feel trapped. So they'll hang on to their interest and hold back the love because they still feel significant in this world. And in all reality, what are they doing? Cheating the marriage. They're cheating the marriage. They're committing adultery. Listen to me. They're committing adultery with their hobby, with their sport, because they're allowing it to fulfill them in a way that they should be getting fulfilled by their spouse. And they're also holding back. Remember, we talked about holding back a few weeks ago. You're holding back. You're not supposed to hold back from your spouse. Does God hold back from you? No. Do you want him to? Then do your job. You see, number 9, do you make your spouse feel significant when you're doing your own thing? Likely not. Because you're running around out there getting fulfilled in your own way. And you could be leaving, I'll talk to it from a man's perspective. I could be leaving my wife at home very vulnerable. If she was out running around doing her own thing, would that fulfill me? No. You see how the breakdown happens? Because then somebody else goes out and finds a different way to fulfill them. And then the whole thing just kind of spirals right out of control. And the question has to be asked, what is being fulfilled? What is it you're lacking? And these are questions that you need to be able to sit down and be honest. And women are going to come up with a few different things. Guys will come up with a different list. What it is, guys, is we've got to look at them for the way that they're built and the way that they think. And ladies, you've got to look at a man for the way that he's built and the way that he thinks. What is lacking? Let me ask you this question. Do you consider this a form of cheating? Because what's happening is you are being fulfilled from something or someone else that should be fulfilling those roles, fulfilling those absences, those lacks in your life. And if you're out there trying to search it down from somewhere else other than your marriage, from within your marriage, you got a problem. You got a problem. That's where you get into the workaholic thing. That's where you get into the sportaholic. That's where you get people who get drawn off into computer land. They get into all these chat rooms and they have friends online when their spouse is sitting in the other room and they don't even communicate. Lacking? Yeah. Those are things you should be getting from your spouse, and that should be your definition. The things that I should be getting from my spouse, that I'm getting from somewhere else or someone else or something else, should be considered a form of cheating, because you're cheating the marriage. You're cheating the relationship. Number 12. Listen to this one. Do you feel the love of your spouse, even though you know they do? Even though you know they love you, do you feel the love of your spouse? And a lot of people will say, no, I don't. Why? Because what happens is complacency sets in. Complacency sets in. Oh, he'll always be there. I can go out and do what I want to do. I can go out with the girls and I can go out and do this. I can go out and, it's just a guy friend. We're just going to go to the movie. He'll always be there. You think that makes him feel loved? What about on the other hand? You come home, guys, and you're always talking about this girl at work, this girl at work, this girl at work that your wife never, ever gets to meet. You think that that's making her feel your love? Or is that making her feel like you're cheating the relationship? And therefore, it goes from that cheating of the relationship for your lack to an actual cheating within the relationship sexually. Because you get drawn and drawn and drawn away. And what's darkness love to do? Steal, kill, and destroy. And he's just like a fisherman. He throws it out there, gets you on the hook, and then he just slowly starts reeling you in. And the next thing you know, you're in the boat and you didn't even realize that you were on a hook. You got played. Let me ask you this. Do you feel secure in their love? Do you feel secure in their love? See, love should be secure. Love should be fulfilling the home. And if there's no love between the mother and the father or the spouses, how do you think the kids are going to take that? You think they're stupid? No, they're going to start seeing some lack. They're going to start seeing animosity. They're going to start seeing body language. I think the words you speak are only like 7% of actual communication. Kids see these things. They see mom sitting in one room, dad sitting in another room. Do they see you holding hands? Do they see you sitting on the couch with each other? Do they see you taking care of each other? Doing the small things for each other? Hey, I'm getting a glass of water. Can I get you one? Hey, I'm going to make a tea. Would you like a tea? Hey, I'm going to have a beer. You want to sit down with me? Do your kids see those things? Do they see you communicating? Do they see you laughing together? You see, that's a healthy home. That's a healthy culture. And this whole thing here is a breakdown. What we're talking about here is the negative side of it, basically the breakdown of the culture that it should be. And these are the things that go on. These are things that we need to ask ourselves. Let me ask you another question. What number are we on? Number 14. This is a good one. What about in specific moments? Or does it waver? What if you make a mistake? What if you screw up? Are you just waiting for the next blow up? Or is there, you know that there's going to be a fulfillment of peace there? Hey, you'll get it right next time. Hey, it's okay. I got your back. Hey, I'm with you. What about those things? Does it waver? Is it only hit and miss when we're really jiving and communicating? And because you're going to have these highs, and it's going to go like this. It always does. We got to try and get it like this, but at the same time, we have got to try our best to level it out and keep peace at a very high level, keep love at a very high level. You see what happens when you get a glass of water and it's filled to the very top. If it's going to go like this and you start shaking the water, it's going to start spilling out, and then you stop, there's a little less. It's got to be refilled then. And we've always got to constantly be topping that thing up until we can get to that plateau of maturity where this whole thing will level out for you. Let me ask the next question. Do you feel secure that they have your best interest? Do you feel secure that your spouse has your best interest? As a protector, man or woman, as a provider, a defender for the guys for that part of it. I'm a man, so you're going to hear it from a man's perspective more. Do you feel secure that they have your best interest? Ladies, do you feel like that? Do you feel secure? You feel like he's providing? Because that's what we have to do, guys. We have to provide security. Part of the job, part of being a biblical husband. The 16th point, how certain are you that your spouse is going to stay and love you? You can number these things and go through them and number them 1 through 10 and where you think they fit in on the list. But these are serious questions that you've got to answer. And then answer them for yourself and answer them for your spouse, and look at it through your spouse's perspective and answer them. And then sit down and compare notes afterwards. How certain are you your spouse is going to stay and love you? The 17th point. How certain do you feel in moments about that love? How certain do you feel in moments about that love? A lot of this stuff can get really hard to answer. There's probably some people that are going to watch this and it'll bring them to tears. But you got to make sure that love is provided through thick and thin. It's got to be provided. Let me ask you this question. Number 18. I'm going to dump this one on the guys more. What variety do you bring to the relationship? What about surprises? What about desires? What about fun? What about respect? What about support? Let's look at the fun thing. Do you ever just do something crazy just to get her to laugh? something off the wall. I could say some things right now, but my wife is probably in the house laughing right now. You got to realize that you got to bring a variety. You can't just come in from work every single day, kick the boots off, sit on the couch, grab the remote, where's my dinner, watch some TV, eat, go to bed, get up in the morning, not see her before you leave for work, take off to work, and do the whole thing over again. You know what it becomes? It becomes mundane. You got to keep this thing alive. Grab her by the hand, go for a walk. Grab her, pick her up. I'm dumping this one on the guys. Ladies, you can do the same thing in your own way. What do you do for surprises? What do you do for fun to do something just to, whoa, that's different. You see, because when you get into these places, we always expect somebody else to bail us out of them. We always dump it on our spouse, but at the same time, what can we bring in to do something different? Because it's not always the guys, it's not always the girls, but you know what you can do? Have fun with it. Bring a variety and look to bring a variety. Number 19. Question. Are you growing together? Kind of a yes and no. But you got to sit back and you got to look. Are you growing together? My wife and I, we talk about this stuff. We talked about it this week before I even wrote this down. I kind of stole that one. And we sat there. It's like, it's so nice to be able to grow together. Go through things hand in hand. After being married for 27 years now, to be able to take a hand and walk through this thing called life and get through it with somebody that you love. Have fun with it. God wants us to have fun. You think that you read through the Bible, you don't think that they had a lot of laughs in there too? Sure they did. They enjoyed. When they were sitting around, even at the Last Supper, what were they doing? They're relaxing, sitting around, talking, drinking, having some wine, some strong drink, enjoying. And that's what God wants for us too. He wants us to enjoy this creation that He's made and put people in. Is it going to get better? Well, things are going to get worse, but it's going to get better for us. Why? Because it's in His promises. It's in His promises. So are you growing together? Let me ask you the next question, number 20. Are you contributing to each other? And that's a big one. Are you contributing to each other? You better take a look at that one. Are you contributing to not to yourself, to your spouse? Well, I'm contributing more than she is, or I'm contributing more than he is. You know what? What's your 100%? Contribute your 100% and let somebody else maybe come up to your level. Just keep contributing. Why? Because you're doing it the way that God would do it, the way that He has done it. You're still a child of the Almighty God. Whether you're a man, a woman, a husband, a wife, you're still a child of the Almighty God. And He still has principles that He does for His children. So why shouldn't we reciprocate those principles unto others? Do unto others as you'd have done unto you. Try it. See, these are principles of the kingdom that work. Because sooner or later, it may take 6 days. It may take six hours. It may take 6 weeks or 6 months. But sooner or later, somebody's going to change because you're continually filling them up. And don't do it out of a mockery state either. 21st question I got to ask. When you feel insignificant, when you feel unloved, when you feel uncontributed to and not being grown with, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Let me ask you this question. What are they going to do? What's your spouse going to do if you put them in that predicament where they feel insignificant, unloved, uncontributed to? Nobody's growing with them. Where does that leave that whole thing? What are you going to do about it as the giver? And the one that is reeling in and shutting down, what's going to happen to them? You see, let me put it to you this way. What ends up happening? Men want to leave. And what do women want to do? They don't want to give up financial security. They don't want to give up the father of their children. They don't want to give these things up. What they try to do is they fight. See, the men are supposed to be the fighters, but yet here, the women are fighting for that security, for the things that they need for who they are and the way that God built them. They will fight, but they will fight to try to change the guy. And when they can't change the guy and they run out of options, then what happens? Then the leverage comes in. And what's the leverage? Well, I'm leaving and taking the kids, or you're leaving and I'm staying and keeping the kids. And now what do we have? Now we have the kids in the middle of this whole thing. Why? Because the only leverage that's left is the threats of the kids. Because when all the other threats are done away with, when all the other threats are done, what's left? The kids start getting used. You see, you take a pry bar and you put it between a piece of steel, brand new one, full of paint, all painted up. You put it between two pieces of steel and you start prying on it and you using that as leverage to try and move something. When you pull it out of there, it's got some scratches, doesn't it? It's got some paint missing off of it, doesn't it? Because it's been used as a tool. It's been used as leverage. And the kids end up getting drawn into this thing as a bargaining tool. And that's the 23rd point. Then the bargaining tools come in. The only leverage after all the threats is the kids and taking the kids away. And now things start going really sour. You see, guys, the 24th point, moving on from that one. Women will beg for your attention in many, 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 many ways. You see, because she wants so much more, because she is begging for you. Listen to me, guys. She is begging for you to be her man and show her what is inside of her. To draw it out of her. That's the way they're built. And it's our responsibility as men to draw this out of them. How do we do that? Well, if you take a feather and you put it in a pail, how can you get that feather out without touching it? Well, I would walk over to the garden hose and I would start putting water in there. And I would fill that pail right up to the very top until that feather floated right out the top of it. Isn't that what the Father wants to do for us? Fill us up with everything that He's got. Drive out all those impurities. Drive out anything that's, because He wants us full of Him and He wants us to be full of Him. But we've got to be able to be accepting of His love. But if we keep these hindrances in our way, we can never be completely full. We'll walk over and we'll shut the tap off before we allow our buckets to be completely filled up and shed ourselves of these things that we try to hang on to that are so dear to us, but mean nothing to the Father, but actually hinder us in His eyes, hinder us in which we most of us know. It's called sin. But they will beg for your attention. Draw out of her what is inside of her. Fill her up. So that all those impurities, all those thoughts, all that other stuff, it goes away. Because you're doing your biblical responsibility as a spouse. And ladies, you can do the exact same thing. Fill your spouse up. The 25th point. You have to fill his or her needs. And let me tell you something. Until you've done your job, until you've done your responsibility with that, you can't walk away. You can't walk away. Because there's a lack. And you may feel like you're the one lacking, but if you're the one listening here, you can start the process. You can start trying to fill up your spouse and see if that reciprocating giving that you have will be given back unto you, pressed down, shaken, running out all over. That's the way the whole thing works. That's applying deep scripture into your relationship. And that's how you move things. It's how you move mountains that are in your relationship, in your marriage. You float them out of the way by filling them up with the things of God, by filling them up with biblical principles, by filling up with love, joy, peace, giving, not being selfish. You see what it is? But people hang on knowing the gap between reality and the maximum because they know that it hasn't been fulfilled. That's why people will drag marriages out for eons when they should have been ended 10, 12 years ago, because they know that there's a gap there between what needs to be filled, the max line, and where the minimum is. And when just the minimum is being met, it's just enough to keep it hanging on. But what we got to do is we got to close that gap. And I'm not talking about bringing the top down. No, the bottom has to come to the top. The cream has to rise to the top. And that cream is within you. You've got it. Are you willing to pour it out? Are you willing to fill your spouse up? You'll be in trouble if you don't. You'll be in big trouble. I'll get into some verses here in a second if I can find them. I don't think I put them in my book here. I have to go look for them for a second. The 28th point, fill your spouse up. Fill your spouse up so much that they want to give to you, because that is your responsibility as a loving spouse. Now, here's what I got to say about the whole thing. Try it for 60 days. Try it for 30 days. Try it for 90 days. And see what kind of response you get. You want to turn your whole relationship around? Fill your spouse up. We like to tear each other down, and it always goes to the ones that we love the most. We try and tear them down. This thing has got to be filled with love, joy, peace, long-suffering, patience, goodness. There's no law against that stuff. What's that? We're talking about fruit. You can fill them up. Because what is all that about? That's about being scripturally responsible as a spouse. Because you will be accountable for this stuff. I'm going to take a step aside here. I think I got my verses right over here. I'm going to go back over some of these points now. I'm going to go back over some of these points. I'm going to do it quickly, and I'm going to apply some scripture to them. I just went through it real quick, and I grabbed some stuff that I thought, hey, you know what, that fits in good there. The first question was, do you love your spouse? Ephesians 5:28. This is how husbands ought to love their wives, like their own bodies. For the man who loves his wife is loving himself. The second point that I made was, do you have to make a decision to go home, to stay home, or to go home and come and go and then leave and go do something else because you don't want to be at home? Let's go to 2 Thessalonians 3:11, and then we'll go to 5. I'll just go to 2 Thessalonians 3:11. We hear that some of you are leading the life of idleness, not busy working, just busybodies. Just got to be out, going around, running around, doing something other than what you should be doing. 1 Timothy 5:13. Besides that, they learn to be idle, going around from house to house, and not only idle, but gossips and busybodies, saying things they shouldn't. How often does that happen? Especially with the ladies, when you get into some problems, and then, you know, next thing you know, some of the ladies run around and, well, you know what my husband did? He did this and he did that. Well, there's one thing when you're looking for counseling, that's fine. There's another thing when it just gets down to complaining. I'm not trying to hold anybody back from contacting. We've had lots of that. And I encourage you to do that so we can try and make some inroads and help. Are your interests interfering? Work, club, recreation, sports. And I went through and I got number 4 through 8 because it talks there about, significance. Do you feel significant? Then Yeshua told his Talmudim, if anyone wants to keep or wants to come after me, let him say no to himself. Take up his execution stake and keep following me. For whoever wants to save his own life will destroy it. We're in Matthew 16:24, by the way. For whoever wants to save his own life will destroy it. But whoever destroys his life for my sake will find it. What good will it do what good will it do someone if he gains the whole world but forfeits his life? Or what can a person give in exchange for his life? For the Son of Man will come in the Father's glory with his angels, and then he will repay everyone according to his conduct. Ouch. Yes, I tell you that there are some people standing here who will not experience death until the Son of Man is coming in his kingdom. You see, that's all about, making your spouse feel significant. Picking it up your own cross, doing your job that you're supposed to do within your relationship, because if you're not going to get it done within your marriage, you're not going to get it done for God. Get it done. Jump down to question number 9 that I asked. Do you make your spouse feel significant when you're doing your own thing? Acts 20, verse 32. And now, brethren, I commend you to God and the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance among them which are sanctified. So if your wife or husband doesn't feel significant, what are you supposed to do? Build them up, fill them up. The 10th one, what is being fulfilled and what is lacking? 1 Thessalonians 4:11 and 12. Also, make your ambition to live quietly, to mind your own business, and to earn your living by your own efforts, just as we told you. Then your daily life will gain the respect of outsiders, and you will not be dependent on anyone. You see, when the two become one, become wed, they're one. You won't be looking outside if you're fulfilling and being fulfilled. You won't be lacking anything within that relationship because you're doing it God's way. Finally. The 11th question I asked, do you consider this a form of cheating? Well, because why? I'll read the whole thing. Do you consider this a form of cheating? Because being fulfilled from someone or something other than your spouse, it really is. 1 Corinthians 6, verse 9. Know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of God? Not being deceived, or be not deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind. Let's go to the 19th one, which was, are you growing together? Ephesians 4:15. But speaking the truth in love may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. You see, you got to grow together. Grow together in love. Grow together in peace. Grow together in patience. Not impatiently, in patience. But grow together. But fill each other up. Be there to support each other. When one starts maybe shaking a little bit and the glass gets a little low, fill their glass back up. Well, they're not showing it to me. Show it to them anyway. Did you have to die for mankind? No, but he died for you, for mankind. It's not always a two-way street when you think it should be a two-way street. No, that's selfishness. That's selfishness. The 20th one, are you contributing to each other? Ooh, this is a good one. Matthew 10:8. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. Freely ye have received, freely give. And the last one, related to that one as well, Romans 8:32. He that spared not his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? You see, if you're willing to give, if you're willing to fill your spouse up, you know what you have access to? Because you're being biblical. It's scriptural. And that's the nice part of this whole thing. And it's so easy. And all you got to do is what? Just show a little bit of love. Just show a little love. Show a little peace. Show a little patience. You should be filling your spouse up with all of these things continually. I would encourage you to take that list of questions, maybe go back and write them down and answer them. Answer them for yourself. And then pretend you're your spouse and answer them for your spouse. Maybe they could do the same thing. And then maybe you could sit down and you could compare notes. You probably learned something from each other. It'd probably give you a good starting point. Grab a glass of wine and do it. Spend an evening, have some fun with it. This doesn't have to be a knockdown, drag it out thing. That's not what this is about. This is about giving you some tools. This is about giving you something to work with. But it's also about identifying where some of the lacks are. And if we can figure out where the lacks are, and if you can figure out where the lacks are, and fix this thing for yourself, the great gains that you can have, because you're applying biblical principles back into your relationship, back into your marriage. And that's what God truly wants for you. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week. I just want to remind everybody once again, check out our Facebook page, check out the Instagram things, and we'll be making announcements on the websites that are coming up. There's 2 of them that are coming up, and I just look forward to that. I think it's going to be a great asset for the entire community, and it's going to be something that's been in the works for some time, and it's just going to be a blessing to us all. Also, remember about the upcoming conference that is going to be in April, and I would encourage you to contact me about that. And I will be going and traveling to Dallas in January, and we will be ministering down there at another conference down there. So if you want to meet us there even, that would be great too. There's going to be a number of the guys that'll be there, and we're going to have a great time as we always do when we get together. So shalom, until next week.